This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Getting today's show rolling is K-State beef reproduction specialist Sandy Johnson, as she reminds cattle producers of things to consider for bull selection. Romulo Lollato, K-State wheat production specialist, continues today's show as he discusses wheat forage yields and the WheatRx seminar in Salina. The Beef Cattle Institute's Phillip, Lancaster, Brian Lubbers, and Bob Larson, with special guest Marshall Stewart in today's show as they converse about the K-State and Garden City Community College partnership from part of their Cattle Chat podcast. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our show talking about bull selection with K-State beef reproduction specialist Sandy Johnson. Sandy, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Sandy, bull buying season is coming up upon us, and wanting to talk through a few things that cattle producers should maybe look into. And the first one, looking into their own operation.
Right. You know, if you're going to invest dollars in genetics for your herd, that's going to influence it for a number of years, it's a good idea to review, what are your goals for your operation? What are your marketing plans? How do you generate replacements? And make sure you have a clear picture of what job you're hiring this bull to do, so to speak. We have a lot of information to help you sort that out. So know what you need first.
And from that, making a selection of maybe a few different breeders and not just one?
Right. We're really blessed here in Kansas that we have a lot of good seed stock producers, and they provide a lot of valuable services to the people that buy bulls from them. And, you have an opportunity to create a good partnership with a particular breeder. They're going to know their bulls very well. And you're trying to look at a catalog or something that they can be very helpful in directing you certain directions, and particularly as they get to know your operation. Some of them also have various marketing plans. So there's just some good opportunities that can occur and exist the more you get to know a breeder and find one that you work with well. You don't have to have that relationship, but I think there's a lot of advantages for people that do.
And looking specifically at those cattle, what is your first thing that you would look at, Sandy, when making a bull selection?
So, we have all kinds of data available to us these days. And so first you need to start by working through some of that. And we have better tools to do that, ability to sort bulls in a spreadsheet. And that data is increasingly available that way. So when you have these ideas of what your goals are, then you need to understand what data points help you reach those goals. And for our commercial producers, they really need to think about using some of the economic selection indexes. And they might be, somebody calculated those in Timbuktu, and how do I know that their economics match mine? Well, they don't exactly, but they're robust enough that they're going to rank these bulls in an appropriate way for your operation. Is it perfect? No, but it's going to help you. And what the index does then is combine a bunch of traits into one number, because, depending on what breed, there's 10, 20, 30 different EPDs. Well, you can't, it's hard to work with all that. Now, you might set, I want a minimum for this trait or a maximum for another trait, but then go use the selection index to help you rank those bulls. And I like to think of starting out on paper, getting a group of bulls that kind of fit my selection criteria, and then you need to go see what they look like. Will they really work for me? Are they sound? Generally the breeder's going to take care of that, but maybe they're not as straight in the front end as you want, or maybe too straight on a hind leg, something like that. There's always degrees of those things, and depending on what your herd looks like, you may have more or less tolerance for those things. So we start on paper and then go look at the actual bulls to see what we like.
Sandy, what are a few of your favorite things to look at on paper?
So, if I'm here, I'm trying to be several different people at once. So if I'm raising my own replacements, then I'm going to look at a more maternal-oriented index. If I'm selling calves at weaning, I want to look at a terminal-oriented index. And, people that are trying to do both, I think they have a harder job. And depending on the size of their operation, I might suggest that maybe they need to find a good source replacement and raise terminal calves that they could get further that way. But, you got to figure out your own system. So, trying to look for those indexes that fit what I want this bull to do. If he's siring replacement heifers for me, then I'm looking for some of those maternal indexes. If he's going to sire calves I sell at weaning or as yearling, then I'm looking for more terminal related indexes.
Anything you producers should maybe make sure that a bull doesn't have reference to?
Well, everybody's always, nobody wants to have calving difficulty, but, the thing I would encourage people to do is use, rather than using birth weight or actual birth weight of the bull, look at the calving ease and the maternal calving ease, depending on how you're going to use that sire. So the calving ease is going to try to take into account not only birth weight, but the ability of that female to lay down and have that calf, some other things that might have to do with hormone production and relaxation of the pelvis. Those things are not in birth weight. And so for selecting bulls to sire our replacement females, that part becomes important. And we do have people that have selected for lower and lower birth weight. And indeed, we have smaller and smaller calves. And there's a point where the calf is maybe too small and not vigorous enough if he comes out on a bad weather day. So they can be too small, I think. And we have other tools to try and kind of balance those things. And calving ease and maternal calving ease are important EPDs to understand and use to try and manage that. And I think the fact, we first had these European breeds come in and we used a lot of those AI. We had a lot of calving difficulty. We didn't have that information, and there was a lot of calving difficulty at that point in time. But we have really gotten past a lot of that. Not to say people don't have a calving difficulty, but certainly nothing like what I recall as a youngster and as we first started working with some of these continental bulls.
What exam should cattle producers make sure they get done on their bull?
Right. So hopefully your breeder is providing a breeding soundness exam on these bulls prior to the sale, but we have to keep in mind that number one, a breeding soundness exam is one, we're looking at one point in time, and that if there's a long time between that breeding soundness exam and when you're going to turn that bull out, it's one look in time. Has anything happened to him? Did he run a fever? Those can interfere with semen production. So we need to be aware of the risk we take if we strictly rely on the BSE for the breeder. If it's a long time, now on a yearling bull, probably it's going to be fairly close to turnout. But, it depends on what you're buying, a more mature bull. But with today's prices and trying to manage risk, turning out a bull that hasn't had a recent breeding soundness exam is, like driving down the road without any insurance. I hope you don't need it, but, just took a rock in my windshield the other day. A little disappointing. Didn't plan on it. Not a big deal, really, but you like to have something backing you up. So breeding soundness exam looks at semen quality, as well as the physical characteristics of the bull and making sure all the reproductive organs are functioning. And, some of these bulls, if they were exposed to a higher level of grain during the development period, sometimes they have more likely to have some vesiculitis, inflammation of the vesicular glands. So that the palpation that goes with the breeding soundness exam is an important part of that, to truly examine all aspects of that bull's ability to successfully mate. Doesn't promise that he has good libido, but those are the things that we can reasonably measure and try and learn about that bull.
Any resources you recommend cattle producers if they're wanting to find out more information?
Well, in terms of selection, we just had a seminar in our Beef Reproductive Task Force. You can find it at beefrepro.info that looked at some selection things. Also, ebeef.org is the website of the extension animal breeders. Lots of good things there. And then if you're interested more on the bull fertility side, we have more things in our meeting archives, again, at beefrepro.info.
Sandy, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Glad to be here.
That was K-State Beef Reproduction Specialist Sandy Johnson discussing bull selection factors. If you'd like to find out more information, the resources that Sandy mentioned were beefrepro.info and eatbeef.org. I will link them in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Wednesday show talking about wheat forage yield comparison and mentioning the WheatRx seminar that is upcoming with K-State Wheat Production Specialist Romulo Lollato. Romulo, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Shelby. It's great to be here with you.
Romulo, as we're talking about different forage yields and comparing them, what are some big factors you saw, especially for this year, that impacted that forage?
Well, forage is one of three very important components in a dual-purpose wheat production system, right? So, of course, if we're in a dual-purpose, we're looking for beef cattle gains early on, and then we're going to harvest for grain, right? So one of the three things that we look at is forage, of course, because it impacts our beef gain directly. And that's very important late fall and through the winter, right? Then we also look at date determination. So these different varieties, they differ in what we call the first hollow stem, and that impacts how long the wheat can be grazed in the spring. And finally, we are also interested in how well these varieties can bounce back from the stress that grazing imposes into them. And so those three things, right? Forage accumulation, data first hollow stem, and grain yield following grazing are three important things that we look at when we're doing variety selection for our dual-purpose systems. In terms of the forage production, which is our goal to talk about here in the beginning of this talk, really the main things that impact it, they will be kind of weather and soil related, right? So primarily what will drive forage accumulation for wheat by late part of the fall and into the winter is water availability, right? Whether there was a very dry fall or whether there was enough moisture in the fall to allow that forage to grow. Temperature accumulation between planting and that very hard freeze in the fall when the crop stops growing, right? So the earlier growers plant, the more temperature accumulates before that first freeze, and that affects forage growth quite a bit. And fertility, right? And so available nitrogen and phosphorus as well, in furrow especially, really drives up forage production. So those are the biggest factors that drive forage production. Now, when we are in a dual-purpose system, another factor that drives it too, although perhaps not as much, is our variety selection. Some varieties, they will produce more forage naturally. Other varieties might not produce as much forage, but bounce back from grazing. Others, perhaps they have a longer grazing period, and so on the long run, they will produce more forage, even though maybe in the beginning of the season they might not differ, right? So different varieties, they will have those different characteristics in terms of forage production, base of first hollow stem, and recovery from grazing. And we measure all of that in a trial near Hutchinson, right? Reno County there in the south central part of the state. And the reason we measure it there, Shelby, is because that kind of reflects the northern end, the northern edge of where wheat is grazed in Kansas, right? So we want to have an idea of how things play out there. Of course, from there, south and west, there's quite a bit of wheat grazing, right? And so those are the main factors that impact forage production. If we look directly at last year, since we were able to plant this trial on time, after some on time for an early planted trial, after some rainfalls there in September, we had a good emergence, and forage levels were actually very decent compared to other historical levels that we have had. To give an idea, forage levels this year there were averaging about 1,500 pounds of dry matter per acre, which is really good for Kansas, right? The earlier plantings and warmer falls or falls with more moisture could maybe accumulate more than that, up to 2,000 or even 2,500. But, we're happy with 1,500. Go to Oklahoma, it's more common to have 2,000, 2,200 pounds of dry matter production in the fall. But here for Kansas, since it gets cold a little bit sooner, we are happy with an average of about 1,500 pounds of dry matter with forage produced in the fall.
Were there any notable varieties that were really high or maybe kind of low?
Well, there is one variety that seemed to be on the lower end. Right, that variety was actually a new K-State variety, KS Mako. It's exceptional yield, right? It yields really well. This variety does over the long run. It has a really good quality. But this year, it was on the low end in our forage measures. There were 4 or 5 varieties that really stood out in terms of being higher yielding varieties in terms of forage. Those were AP Sunbird, KS Ahern, KS Providence, and KS Territory. And then all the other varieties were kind of in between, right? All of the other varieties that were measured, they were kind of in between these two, not necessarily showing a lot of differentiation. So again, while variety selection is an important aspect of dual-purpose production systems, the main thing there is that you need a variety of those 3 traits, right? Forage production, later date of first hollow stem to allow a few extra days of grazing in the spring, and good recovery from grazing, not only fall forage yield, since those other factors, temperature, moisture, and fertility, they play a much larger role on forage accumulation than variety selection.
Romulo, while you're in, wanting to mention the upcoming WheatRx seminar that's taking place 1 week from today on February 12th. And what is this seminar?
Yes, exactly 1 week from today there, next Wednesday, February 12th, we're going to have the WheatRx series of seminars that we are going to have in Salina this time. So we're holding this north central Kansas WheatRx. We haven't hosted one in Salina yet, so we are excited by hosting it here. WheatRx really is a collaboration between Kansas State Research and Extension and the Kansas Wheat Commission, with the goal of bringing growers the most updated information that we have on managing for high yield and high quality wheat and still being profitable, right? And so it's a series of talks that we're going to have in the morning there of next Wednesday, February 12th. And those talks, they're going to really go from, we have the Wheat Commission that will be giving an update on how things are going on their side, and also some new exciting projects that we have together with the Wheat Commission and K-State that growers are going to actively be involved on. Then we have Dr. Alan Frick, the wheat breeder. He's going to be talking about new developments in his program, as well as variety selection in central Kansas. Weeds, we have Dr. Sarah Lancaster. She's going to be doing a talk on weed control in winter wheat. Dr. Kelsey Anderson Onofre is going to talk about disease control in wheat fields. Dr. Dorivar Ruiz Diaz talking about fertility management for high yield and high protein wheat. And I will be sharing some data on variety-specific management, right? So a lot of different things there on the agronomic side of production for wheat. Many of these things growers are thinking right now, decisions that they need to make, whether it is fertility or fungicides or things along these lines. So we are trying to bring them the most accurate and updated information about what to do in their farms to max out profit. And since this is in Salina, we're doing this in collaboration with Great Plains. So we're going to wrap up this event by having a tour in their facility for those who are more inclined for equipment and planting technologies and whatnot. Very excited with that tour on the Great Plains facility as well.
What does registration look like?
If you are a member of the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers, the event is free. You need to register so we can keep track and have an idea of how many people will be there via the Kansas Wheat website. However, it will be free if you are a member of the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. If you're not a member, the cost is $110. On those $110, it's important to notice that not only you're paying for lunch and breakfast that will be included in the event, right? But really, this cost goes towards covering fully the cost of becoming a member of Kansas Association of Wheat Growers, which costs $110, right? So really, you're paying to become a member and having all the members' benefits, right? Receiving the wheat variety handbook in the end of the year and so on. So many benefits of being a member of that association. Then, of course, having a chance to go to these events as well.
Romulo, can you remind us of where people need to go to get registered?
Absolutely. So they will go to the Kansas Wheat website, which is kswheat.com/WheatRx, right? So in the Kansas Wheat Commission website, kswheat.com/WheatRx, takes you directly to the registration webpage where you just put your info there. If you're a member of COG, then you just put your membership number as well, and that waives your registration cost. If you're not, your registration costs go directly towards your membership.
Romulo, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shelby. And if growers have questions or anything, they're always welcome to reach out to me on social media at KSU Wheat cross platforms, and I'll be happy to touch base with anyone who has any questions.
That was K-State Wheat Production Specialist Romulo Lollato. You can find more information about the Fall Forage Yields or WheatRx Seminar by going to eupdate.agronomy.ksu.edu. If you're just wanting to find more information about the WheatRx Seminar, you can do that by going to kswheat.com/WheatRx. I will link all of these resources in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're getting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Wednesday show with part of the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast with Bob Larson, Phillip Lancaster, Brian Lubbers, and special guest Marshall Stewart.
So one of the questions I've got, Marshall, so the setup with Garden City Community College, are K-State faculty going to be teaching the courses out there in the second or the third and fourth year, or is it going to be distance education? How's that exactly going to work?
There will be, I'm sure, some distance, but we're going to have faculty in place. You got to remember, we have a research center out there, an agricultural research center. We have extension faculty deployed that have really strong in their content, be it in agriculture or whatever it may be. There's ways to buy out that time and have them actually teach live courses there, do the lab work at the research center. I mean, there's a way to do this, and it's exciting to me, and I believe it's going to be, I can tell you, the excitement in Garden City was off the chart. They were so thrilled to have K-State walking into this space. Kansas Board of Regents have been very supportive. Lots of good things, and I think it really meets a need. Again, land-grant universities, we're here to serve the state, to meet needs. This is a need we can meet, and I'm really proud of our president, Rich Linton, and our provost, Jesse Mendez, for taking the leadership on this.
So you mentioned leveraging kind of some of the ag-specific infrastructure we already have there, right? So is this limited to agriculture? Will there be other programs? And then as we move into other areas, how do you see that infrastructure kind of growing, expanding to meet those needs?
I think there'll be two other areas. I know there's two areas that Garden City specifically is interested in. One deals in the health arena with our PA program. There's a real need for rural health care, and we have a great physician's assistance program that's now doing some wonderful work. We think that could be a next opportunity there. We've got to figure out, again, how to teach content on the ground. There'll be some partnerships we have to play out there. The other one is rural education. We have a real need in rural America, much less rural Kansas, for more public school teachers. And we are already doing a lot of that work, actually. We've got a program through our College of Education where a person can take their first 2 years at a community college and then get their second 2 years online. That's not in person, but we're already playing in that space. If we can move that to where it's also a live instructor helping with certain things, student teaching in place, it keeps the talent there. They don't go away to Manhattan, Kansas, and then never go back home, which is something we hear a lot. This is a way to educate in place, and I think it's a move of the future. I think it's going to enable K-State to do, again, another way of delivering content, delivering education. But I think you're going to see health and education as the two areas we'll go into beyond agriculture as we think for the future.
In my mind, I'm thinking, so we're starting to blur a little bit between outreach and the educational components. Are those, maybe that's a really healthy thing to say we're really into providing education and really combining kind of the missions of K-State together? Is that, or am I overstepping?
No, you're not overstepping at all. In fact, if you look at higher education, step back a second, 30,000-foot view, higher education lost the narrative in this country over the last 20 years about the value of a degree. We know that. I own that. I'm part of the system. A lot of us have been in this space. One of the ways you change that game is you think about who you serve. This is really about serving people. How we do it today may look different. How we go about it may be degree programs, working with a community college. But the bottom line is we have a responsibility and obligation to serve the people of Kansas. And if it's a partnership that makes that happen, if it's delivering different new things in extension, if it's doing different kinds of outreach programs, with the things that you guys do all the time, whatever it is, we're here to serve. That's our job. And so it's Land Grant University has a tripart mission. Research, which we call knowledge creation. Where a second realm of that is what we call knowledge transfer, which is teaching, transferring knowledge. Third part of that is knowledge application, which is taking it to people. And if it means a degree program, a credential program, a micro-credential certificate program, a 4-year degree program, doing it in a different way, we need to do that. We can't be so stuck in where we talk about innovation on universities all the time. Well, maybe it's time for us to innovate. Yeah, and this is innovation, and we need to be doing this. And it's not a choice of should we? We have to. It's our obligation to the people of Kansas.
That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.